You ready?
Yeah, you ready?
I'm ready.
You ready for your interview?
I'm ready.
So
Okay.
fun. Okay, go.
Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And here we are, episode 200.
Oh my gosh.
I'm here with my friend Kim Zoller. Hey, Kim.
Hi. So
Kim
fun.
is here with us today for a very special reason. Kim, if you remember, was on episode 39, and she talked a lot about mindfulness. You'll have to go back and check that episode out. But today, we're going to flip the script. Kim's going to ask me some questions.
We are, because you guys, it is Bruce's 200th episode.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really impressive.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. And we were having coffee the other day, and I just thought, why should Bruce be interviewing anyone? Don't we want to know more about Bruce? And I feel like I have been fortunate to have known you since, I think, 1995.
Yes, back in the Daryl Flood days.
Back in those days.
Oh my goodness,
Yes, yes. So Bruce was actually in one of the sessions that I was giving, and you were very excited and so in it. You're a learner, Bruce. I mean,
am.
you are.
I remember I was hungry back then. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't in my lane. I was just trying to,
Figure it out.
Yeah. Like we all are.
Yes. Yeah. So, what's interesting is that in order to prepare for today, I have done some interviews about Bruce. And one of the things that that actually someone who you interviewed and who is a client of yours where you've spoken at their company is Angela Vasquez. And one of the things that she said just on that is that what she loves so much when you were there is that Bruce left everyone with a plan. And that she, even talking to me, remembered, oh my gosh, I have my plan. I need to go back. So I just, as we start out and we talk about your plan and where you started, one thing that I would love to know, and I think other people would really love to know too, Bruce, is how did you start this podcast? What made you want to do it? What made you say, all right, I think that I have something to say. I think that people can learn. What got you here?
Yeah, I think this is a story for the ages. I'll never forget. I went to a meeting. This is March of 2020. We all know where we were in March of 2020. I went to a sales meeting. My boss had called in and said, hey, everybody needs to come in and let's talk about this pandemic thing. What's it mean for everybody? And so all the national account sales team was around the table, and we have three different divisions. We have our residential sales division, we have our commercial division, and we have our national account division. And he looked at the residential guys and he said, hey guys, I think you're going to be okay. People are going to still moving. Let's get out there. Let's do some virtual surveys. Let's find a way to serve. You guys in the commercial arena, I think you're going to be okay. People are going to need to have some social distancing. They're going to move the desks around and need some space. Some are going to downsize. Some are even going to decide not to have an office anymore. And then he looks over at me and he said, Bruce, national account corporate, I think you're going to have a long road, because I think all of the people that serve in the business community, that serve HR in particular, that are moving people, have put the pause button on moving people. And what's interesting though is that my whole career I have networked at coffee shops and found ways to connect with people, and all of a sudden my business is going to change and the coffee shops are closed, and I'm trying to figure out, how can I stay connected?
Yeah.
And that's what gave me the idea, and I reached out to some people I knew, and that's kind of how that started.
Just curious, because I know that for myself, that I looked at the minute the pandemic hit, I looked at it and said, oh my gosh, I have an opportunity. I need to do something different. And it sounds to me like that's what you did. Was there ever a moment where you got nervous, or you just went into full creative, let's go Bruce mode?
Oh, I was nervous from day one.
You were?
Actually, it wasn't nervous about doing the podcast. It was nervous about the setup.
Yeah.
It's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
You know, we all want to try something, but we haven't done it before. So there's that fear there.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this is that I think what most people do. They call people they know and they say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Can you help me get started? And fortunately for me, I have some people in my network that had done a podcast. Funny story, years ago, I told Lynn Stewart this, who had been on my podcast. I mentioned to her that I wanted to do like Jimmy Kimmel at one time. Be like the guy on the street that would go into the workplace and say, hey, Kim, tell me about employee engagement, you know, and do like a little 5-minute bit, but I never could find the bandwidth. And all of a sudden this, starting that podcast gave me this why. Like, okay, well, why do you want to do it? Well, I need to stay connected. I need to stay educated, and I want to stay visible in the community. And that's what this has helped me do. And I know you have some questions here, but one of the things that I have overcome in my career is failure. And it's like, hey, if I fail, I'll work through it.
Right.
And so I have some ups and downs.
So when you think about that, because
Yeah.
that actually
Oh, my
is
goodness.
one of my
Oh,
questions.
okay. All right.
If you think about a failure in your life,
Yeah.
or a challenge, maybe not a failure, a challenge that you've had, what happened, number one,
Yeah.
and how have you gotten past it? And when you think about leadership and everything that you talk about within leadership, how has it helped you, and has it helped you be more resilient because of all the things that you know?
You know, when it comes to failure, I know we have all experienced this. And what's interesting is people will say, hey, fail fast, fail early, fail often. And I'm like, I have this love-hate relationship with failure.
Yeah.
Because I know that when I fail, I'm going to have this black cloud that we all have it, like that black cloud, it just follows you around. But you also know that when you fail, you're in the learning mode. Like you're going to learn something from that. And I've had many, many failures. But one.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
While that's happening, are you actually saying that to yourself? Are you actually saying, I'm going to learn something here? Or are you just in it and not feeling great about it? And then in retrospect, like especially now that this is such a part of your life, you know, and it's something that you and I share, which I love that, because now because of what we do, I'm able to be in it and say I'm learning. So I feel like you would probably say the same thing.
Yeah, no question. I mean, listen, there's no question. I had a failure one time where I've shared this in my very first book, The Parking Lot Story. I was an operations manager. There were several things on my to-do list, and a guy comes over one day, and we had this parking lot that had like these potholes all throughout the parking lot. And it reminds me of the quote, success is filled with potholes of failure.
Right.
And so we had these potholes, and everybody would always complain. It was quite embarrassing. But my job was I had all these other things at the top of the list. And one day, a guy named Joe came over. And Joe said, hey, I'm doing some work down the street. I've got some asphalt. And why don't I come over and fill your potholes? I said, that's fantastic. What's that going to cost me? He said, oh, it's X amount of dollars per cubic foot. And I'm like, make it simple for me. He said, that'd be about $1,000. I said, Joe, let's do it. And so he was going to do this on Friday. And on Thursday, my wife called and said, hey, we got a personal issue come up. We're not going to be in town Friday. So I told my team, I'm going to be here Friday. Joe's going to come over. He's going to fill the potholes. And then I'll come in on Saturday and I'll dispatch the crews. And so, what they say, no news is good news. Like, there was no call on Friday. Like, hey, everything's getting done. I come in on Saturday and I turn the corner and there's a whole brand new parking lot. Not little chocolate chips all everywhere. A brand new parking lot. Had the white stripes and it had the handicap painting. It was beautiful. Like it was transformed the building. And I remember thinking two things. Number one, I thought, wow, did this really cost $1,000? And my second thought was, I'm getting ready to get fired.
What happened?
And what happened was that I had not collaborated with anyone. I had this $2,500 approval. I'm like, let's just do it. I didn't talk to anybody about it. And I called Joe. I said, Joe, this is fantastic. This is is this $1,000 like we agreed? And he said, oh, no, that's not $1,000. I said, well, we agreed on $1,000. He said, no, we agreed on X amount per cubic foot. When I was there, I told the team that was watching me do this, I have more. And they said, just go ahead and do it all. And so, long story short, it was over $20,000.
Oh my gosh.
And the whole time I had that black cloud going, you know what, I failed here, I'm getting ready to get fired. This is my first real opportunity, what I'm gonna do. And the moral of the story is that
Well, wait,
we get
before
through
you tell
it.
the moral of the story, what happened? Did you get in trouble?
So actually I went and talked to my boss.
Okay.
And she said, hey, Bruce, let's work through it. She called, they negotiated the price. And I think we got it done for half of that. I think we ended up paying $10,000 for it. But I just remember I was in the valley. You know, we talk about peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
I was in the valley.
So what was the biggest lesson? Because I heard a few things.
Yeah.
So what were your 3 takeaways from that?
Well, the biggest takeaway was that's not my expertise area. I need to go talk to people that might have some expertise in that area.
Yeah.
I need to collaborate. I think that's one thing that I've learned. Another thing is I was in a hurry. I wanted to get it done. Patience. And that's probably an area I've probably grown in the most in my entire career is patience. I'm like, hey, let's just get it done. Let's check it off. Get it on the to-do list. Those were probably the biggest learning lessons. But the biggest takeaway is this, and I want everybody to hear this, is that we're going to go through those moments, and we just need to remember that it's a season. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
We just need to learn from it and move on.
Right, and it's such perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because now when you look at it, not only is it a good story, but it's also the perspective of there's so much going on in the world, and there's so much going on with people that we know, and just so much in the world that when you think about something like that, to keep it in perspective and to be like, that is a parking lot.
It's a parking lot.
It's a parking lot.
It's a parking lot.
And it's also money, which is something, but at the same time, it's just that. And I think that as leaders, don't you think that taking perspective is really, like, when you think about you being a leader and think about other people who you really admire, don't you think perspective plays such a big part in your life and their lives?
I think perspective is everything.
Yeah.
I mean, think about, we talked about the pandemic earlier. Think about that for a second. I probably would have never started the podcast without the pandemic. I might have not ever had my mom on my podcast because of the pandemic. I mean, I might have maybe asked her some questions. I might have done something. But to have her on.
Was she one of your favorites?
Definitely.
What made that so fun? I mean, it's not only is it amazing having your mom and a memory to have forever, for your kids and grandkids, but what was something that you got from interviewing your mom?
I just wanted to ask her, like, what was life like when you were younger, and not only for me, for my family. I just think it's so great, like hey, let's look back. What some of the joy in our life, some of the things that have shaped me. You know, my mom and dad are, they're bowling proprietors. And so they've been in bowling their whole life. They've been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And my mom is just, that's what she's loved. Like, she's the talk about networker. She's the master networker on the lanes. Everybody loves her, and she's such a joy to be around. And I just wanted her to tell her story. Yeah. And it was joyful. I've had other family members on, I've had friends on, I've had people I admire on. But because of that pandemic, now all of a sudden 200 podcast shows.
I know,
and now
amazing.
With you.
It's amazing.
Interviewing. And so I talk about that a lot whenever I do presentations. I talk about the importance of perspective.
Okay, so I'm going to shift you for a second.
Sure.
Because 200.
Yeah.
And we both use the word amazing a lot. And one of the things that I think is so important, and I see you do it all the time, is you celebrate. You celebrate other people, and you celebrate yourself. And I love it. And in fact, someone else, like, in fact, I was interviewing someone else, and they said one of the things that they loved about you, Bruce, was that you are able to be proud of yourself. Right, so something that I know, something that I know about leadership that's so important is that the way that our brains work is that it is so incredibly important to celebrate daily, celebrate weekly, celebrate monthly. What have I done? Have I achieved this? And celebrate it, because what happens is our brains want to do more of that when we celebrate. And I love how you celebrate people. I love how you celebrate yourself. And really what you're doing is that you're creating like this culture of Bruce around you that you may not even realize you're doing, but it really draws people to you, and it makes people want to have more of that, because I don't think that there's enough of that in our lives. And so where do you think, like in your life, and even on this 200th podcast, where would you bring in celebration?
Okay, this is a great topic. This is a great topic, because I think a lot of people look at celebration also as self-promotion. And they don't want to, like, I know I did that, but I don't want to put that out there.
Yeah.
It looks like I'm talking about myself. But let me tell you where that came from. So for me, as a young boy growing up in Edmond, Oklahoma, I remember, and I wrote about this in my first book, I remember the first time I recovered, I was playing football, I recovered a fumble, right? I recovered the football. And I don't know what position I played. I have no idea what the score was. I just remember when I went back to the bench, my mom came over and hugged my neck and said, "That's worth a 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper."
Oh, I love that.
It's worth it. And it's like, man, that's gold. I mean, as a 7 or 8 year old, 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper. And it encouraged me so much. And I've had people pour into me, and I know what that feels like. And so I've thought, you know what? I'm going to give that to others and let them see how that feels like. And everybody that has come onto the show has something to celebrate.
Yeah.
They've done amazing work.
Yeah.
You're doing amazing work in the leadership development area, in the training area. Amazing.
Thank you.
And I want to share that with everyone. I want everybody to know, like, hey, you need to know, Kim. You need to know,
Isn't
Angela.
it amazing? Bruce, one thing that I think that I admire so much in you, and I think that that it's a lesson for all of us, and that is going from what you were just talking about with celebrating and celebrating people.
Yes.
Is there can be such an atmosphere of competitiveness, but I always feel like there's enough for everyone. Like even in this space, in every space, there's so much abundance. And it is such a mindset, because what you're talking about in promoting other people, in celebrating other people, in sharing what other people do, is really an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset.
I love that.
It is. And I'm curious, like, as you've interviewed people, 200 people, well, you've interviewed 199, and now that you're like putting this all together, do you think that there's a common thread of mindset, of abundance mindset with leaders you know and have admired in your life?
Oh, 100%. I absolutely. I was thinking about, we talked about the first place we met is the first relocation company I worked for in Dallas, Texas. And the leadership team there had a philosophy, is that if you were going to move up in the organization, you had to find and train your replacement. Now, finding and training your replacement, think about that for a second. You got to teach people what you know.
Right.
And trust that, okay, they're going to come into this and it's not going to knock me out.
Right.
I just have to trust that, but I think at the end of the day, it goes back to, in my last book, I talked about Drive with Purpose. I talked about moving your career from success to significance. I think it goes to significance. I think it goes to, how can I help people? Because was it Zig Ziglar who said, if you help enough people get what they want,
Yes.
you'll get what you want.
Yes.
And that's not a myth. That is a fact.
Yeah.
When you help people, it just comes back to you tenfold.
It does.
And people remember that.
Yeah.
That people remember, they talk about how, there's quotes around, people will remember how you made you feel.
Yes.
People remember when you do good.
They do.
They just do. And I feel like the world needs more of this. I feel like the world needs more energy. The world needs more encouragement. The world needs more of, hey, you can do this.
Don't you think, Bruce, from your perspective, just on this topic, don't you think that you can actually learn this? Don't you think, like, I talk about this a lot and I see you do it a lot, so maybe this really isn't a question, maybe this is something I just want you to expound on a little bit more, that, we go into it, we go into our careers and we want to be successful and we want to drive and we want to do, and then all of a sudden you do start to turn it around and say, wait a minute, if I'm really serving others, I can actually help myself, I can learn from others, and I'm actually doing good in the world. And I would love you to talk about everything you do, from what you do for your vocation at Armstrong, to what you're doing in Life in the Leadership Lane, to all the keynotes you do, all these podcasts. I would love you to talk about how you see yourself serving the world. Like, really, what's your purpose?
Yeah, I love that question. I think at the end of the day, in my second book, Life in the Leadership Lane, my subtitle, I've always thought about that as being my purpose, and that's moving leaders to inspire and change the workplace. Like, if we can just inspire and help people see, like, the possibilities beyond work, like, they can really, like, inspire. And all that circles back to modeling leadership.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it works. Like, I think about the people that I have admired. They are my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Davis, who said, go shake everybody's hand, look them in the eye, let them know what you're going to do for them, and you'll be the class president. I think about my football coach. I think about my mom and dad. I think about my brother. I think about the speakers who poured into me early on, the John Maxwells of the world, who just, like you, and they don't even know it.
Right.
They're just pouring into you. And I just keep coming back to, that's all they did. They were givers. I'll tell you a story I shared in my second book, Life in the Leadership Lane. I shared a story about when I started at Armstrong and I was soaking up sales tapes. I'm not going to say what kind of tape. Maybe it's a cassette tape. No. But CDs, tapes. I was just soaking it up.
Yeah.
And I remember, here's what I was thinking. If all of these gentlemen on these tapes and ladies were sharing all this information and writing books, why are they doing that? They can just go sell more. Like, if they're such great salespeople,
right?
If they're really that great, why don't they just go sell more? Why are they writing books and speaking? And here's what I learned. I learned that they're not in the selling profession. They're in the giving profession.
Right.
And in my latest book, I talk about learn, earn, and return. And what happens is we start out early, we're learning, and then we're like, hey, we learned it, let's go earn it.
Right.
And then we still want to earn it, but now I feel like you too, we are in a season of returning. And I think that's what it all comes back to. And so to answer your question, no, I think people can learn that, but they need to be around.
Yeah.
Environment. They need to be taking courses. They need to have that always learning mindset.
Always. Okay. So let's talk about habits and rituals.
Man, I'm energized. By the way, these are some great questions. I love habits.
I love habits too.
I love habits.
And I love rituals, and I know you have them.
Yes.
And I am curious because I really believe, from what you just said, in that we are around people, right, who energize us and who also teach us and mentor us. And I would love to know, okay, what time do you get up? I want to know your habits.
Yes.
What are some of the habits that you have? And I think it would be really great to learn from you and that, because I have my habits, and I'm
I love
always
that.
learning
I
other
love
people's
that.
habits.
Early on, I was asking all of my guests, like, they're kind of that question around.
Yeah.
But my podcast got so long, I had all these other questions I wanted to ask, and so I kind of got away from that. But I learned so much. So I'm part of the 5 a.m. club.
Okay, good.
I love getting up at 5 a.m. If it's not 5, it's a little bit earlier, just if I wake up. But 5 a.m. is when I have my alarm set. And my day starts out with really something that you really talk about, and that's mindfulness. I get up, I make me something to drink, usually a cup of coffee, and I'll go sit down, and part of it is reading and just getting my mind calm.
So I'm curious, before you even get out of bed,
Yes.
are you aware of what you're thinking? Like, do you have a ritual or a habit around that?
I actually, so the way my week starts is actually on Saturdays.
Okay.
And so on Saturdays when I get up, I will, during that time, I'll spend 30 to 40 minutes. And a lot of people think, I can't work every day. 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay.
And I'll plan out my week.
Okay.
And during that week, I'll write down what's important that I'm going to do.
Okay.
Right? So sometimes it's a lunch date. Right? It's a business meeting. It might be something with my grandkids. Whatever's important. Appointments, record all of that. Podcast recording, keynotes, preparing, blocking time, and I'm just trying to block time, get it all scheduled. So I know when Monday rolls down what I'm going to be doing.
Okay.
So I know that to answer that question. And so when I get up, I'm
even thinking
about that.
okay, you're thinking about what you're doing.
Mhm.
I'm even thinking a little deeper than that, in that because you're so focused on all of this, on the growth and the leadership.
Yes.
When you wake up, do you go into a place of gratitude? Do you think about it? Like,
Very much.
Yeah.
So in 2019, so 2017, I published Find Your Lane, my first book. So proud of that book. But something I always wanted to do, my mother got me a journal several years before. It was a real small journal. It was a 5-year journal. It was real small and kind of, and I wrote in it. I used it for 5 years. And I thought, I want to publish a journal. I love journaling. I think it's great for gratitude, like we talked about. I think it's good to remember birthdays, all of these different things. So I published a journal in 2019 called Mile Markers, because I feel like each day it's a different mile marker on our journey. And so I've been writing in that ever since, and here we are in 2024. I'm about to finish it. So it's a 5-year journal, and the way it's set up is that it's like Facebook memories. So when you turn to January the 10th, you can see what January the 10th of 2020 was, 21, 22, 23, 24. It's awesome. And I'm in that every day. And I'm in that every day for not a long time,
right,
but enough time. Sometimes it might be 5 minutes, sometimes it might be 15
right.
minutes, but I'm in that absolutely.
And it sets a tone. I mean, it's noticeable.
Yeah.
I don't know about you
Yes.
guys, but it's noticeable. In fact, I just want to stop right here. I have so many questions, but I do just want to talk about one words. The one word. And, this is something that if you're watching, there's a comment section. And I would really love for every one of you watching to go into the comments section and put what is the one word that you would use to describe Bruce. And I wanted to share with you, Bruce, because I did some snooping around.
Okay.
And I found out some one words, and some one words were inspiration. I love this one, actually. I love them all. Inspiring. I thought that was, that was many people said inspiring. I really loved this from Lisa Keglevitz. She said drive.
Oh.
But what I loved about what Lisa said is he is driven to take care of his family, driven to be successful at work, and driven to mentor others, and driven to keep growing. And I love that, because I think that, drive can be one of those things that can be actually misconstrued. And it goes back to what you were saying about you doing good, being for good, and what we are, what we are in this world. And so I think engaging. These are just all one words that people use to describe you. And I want to celebrate that, Bruce, for you, because I just think it's really cool to have you have built a community around you. I also wanted to share a story with you about someone who said they got into HR Dallas, and you were so engaging, and you just kept asking them, "What can I do for you? What can I do for you?" And I think that that's something to celebrate, because sometimes we're so busy in our own worlds that we don't think about, wait a minute, what can I do for someone else to help them? And we make assumptions that people just get it. And I'm curious, just on that, what have you noticed from when you started this to today? Assumptions that you made about leadership, that if you were to think about them today, you would realize that, wow, I shouldn't have made that assumption, because it's something that may not be just natural or normal for everyone out there, unless they are someone who really focuses on their leadership.
Oh man, that is a great question. By the way, thank you, Lisa, and everybody else. I mean, this is like
lots of people.
I have chills.
Yeah,
this is fantastic. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. In fact, everyone who Bruce has actually gone and spoken for in their companies, I got quotes from everyone, and these were all the one words and the quotes. And I just have to say one theme, and the theme is that you are such an inspiration in this.
Thank
and
you.
So it is really fun to be listening to your journey in this lane. This is you're in a different lane today.
I had somebody tell me one time, and I use this now. I use this line. Everything I have, I've learned from someone. But it says, "When you're inspired, I'm inspired."
Yeah, I love that.
And I get inspired by that. I'll tell you a story on that about leadership and assumptions. This was an eye opener for me. And years ago, I was asked to be part of a design team for Dallas HR. So we wanted to help develop our volunteer leaders. And so Deborah Averin and Diane McClendon and Dr. Sandra, we all came together, and Darby Merriman put together a program. And part of that program was a personality assessment, the DISC.
Okay.
And during that time, I was serving as the chairman of the Board of Trustees. And so I had all of these incredible high performers around this table each month talking about how are we going to continue to better the organization from a strategic perspective. And while we had this development program on, we all decided we're going to be part of that so we could support it the first year. And there was one gentleman on the board. He was a vice president of human resources for a very large company. And during our board meetings, he would just sit back and he never said anything. And I remember thinking to myself, he's just not engaged, and I don't know why. So during the program, there was a section we started talking about DISC, and he was in this program. And there is, of course, the red, the yellow, the green
and blue.
Yeah, and the blue.
Yes.
And I was the inspiration.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
And he was the analytical.
The yellow, blue.
The blue.
Yes.
And we started talking about what that means.
Yeah.
And what I learned is this. I want to talk. I want to encourage. I want to let's all get together.
Yes.
Let's have this conversation. And he was like, show me the data.
Right.
I need to see the data. Otherwise, I don't know really what I can do here.
Yeah.
Show me the data.
Yeah.
And after that meeting, I stood up in front of everyone and said, I have a whole different perspective for this gentleman. I admire him more now than ever. And it made me think, I need to figure out what's important to each person in that room.
Right.
And that was a big eye opener. So,
that's awesome.
yeah. So I think that was one big assumption, is that we're all the same.
Right.
And we're not.
100%. And I'm sure you've seen over all these episodes, I'm sure you've seen how different people are and how they all lead differently, and yet they're still amazing leaders.
It's been very fascinating to watch how you think one podcast is going to go one way, and you get off and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know their story.
Right.
I didn't know that's how they that's how they lead. And just interviewing all these different personalities, and they all have these common threads, and I've shared them before. And these common threads are they all have this belief. They have a belief in their way.
Yeah.
And I think it's so good. I feel like there's a lot of common threads, like they're vulnerable, they are relationship driven, but they're results driven too.
Right.
Right. We got to
Right.
get the results, but hey, let's come together and figure it out.
Right.
And so I feel like, when I was at that organization where I made the failure, the parking lot,
Right.
I really felt like I was like on an island at that time. I was kind of doing like my way, like I was managing my days and not leading my life.
Right.
And then I figured out, after being around all these great people, they really lead their life.
Right.
They lead their everyday
Yeah.
in a very purposeful way.
I love that so much, because we talk about mindful goal planning and really starting with the outcome. And I'm curious, when you do these podcasts, because there's one thing, especially from what you just said, that I know to be true, and that is that you're looking at the big picture. You're looking at truly the outcome. And what is that outcome? What's the bigger picture outcome for every single podcast that you have done?
I think for me, I just want to share stories. I want people to know who they are, how they got there.
Why though?
And it's because what I want people to see is a couple of things. Number one, I want people to see that there's not a one way to do things. Like, there are several ways. Like, I want people to pull something from the Lisas of the world and all the different people that I've had on the pod. I want them to pull that and make it their own.
Right.
And you can, it's that learning mindset. It's that learning spirit. It's like, hey, I'm going to go in with, hey, I just want to take away one thing.
Yeah. And Bruce, one thing you said, which I loved, because I'm the same, and I think every mentor that I've had is the same. When you said, I have all these quotes and I have all these things that I hear from different people, and it could be from Maya Angelou, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, which you talked about earlier. And you learn all of those things from people, from different people. And really, if we're smart, and I think this is really what you just said, and I love this, is that we have the ability to learn from some amazing people. And if you take little bits from everyone and you say, what is authentic to me, you really can become a great leader. So when you think about that, and you think about your mentors, what are all the little pieces that, if you were to say, okay, I picked this one from that, and that one from that, and that one from that, what are some of those key little things that you have seen someone do and said, I'm going to be like that?
Yeah, that is so good. I everywhere I go, I learn something. In my Life and Leadership Lane book, I shared at the last chapter, I shared the brick wall of advice. And it was the first 75 episodes of the show, something someone said that I took away. And so my mom, she said, it's not the product, it's the finished product that matters. And I just like, oh my goodness. And one person said, simply say thank you. And I was like, that's a reminder of like the little things are the biggest. And so I take something. I belong also to the National Speakers Association of North Texas, and got to see an incredible speaker. And most of the time, it's just a reminder. Yeah. So he was talking about how he was inspired by watching this wrestler, an undefeated wrestler, an Olympic champion wrestler, and how he told him and his dad would go watch him, and they kind of got joy out of that. Yeah. And he was a wrestler too. And one day he said, "Hey, I don't think I want to go, Dad." And his dad said, "That's okay, but if you want to be great, you got to hang out by the mat." And I thought to myself, man, if I'm gonna be great, I need to be hanging around this. I got to hang around the speakers at conferences. If I want to be a great leader, I need to go hang around great leaders. When I was bowling back in the day, I hung out on the lanes.
Yeah.
You got to hang out. So it's these little things. Then I got to hear Dan Thurman, an incredible keynote speaker in Atlanta, Georgia, and he's a juggler. Think about this for a second. The guy is terrific, but he said something that really hit me. He said, I practice 1,000 catches a day.
Right.
I was like, wait a minute, what does that mean? He juggles 1,000 every morning. And what he was telling us was, you got to put in the work.
Right.
You still got to put in the work.
Right.
So I pulled that out. I was like, okay, Bruce, you got to keep putting in the work.
Right.
You got to pull this out. You got to do that. So every time I'm around, even with you, I'm looking around at your office today, Kim, and I'm like, what can I take out of this here? You got a camera here. You got a camera here, and I'm always trying to figure out how can I take it and make it mine,
Right.
like peace of mind, and then I'm going to share it with the world.
Right.
And that's really what I'm going for. That's that outcome.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And I think, what's so interesting is that, so Bronwyn Allen, who is a huge fan of yours, and I think you know this, that she was my first boss. Did you know
I did
that?
know that.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, lucky you.
I know, boy, talk about
Yes.
a great leader
Home
and
run.
learning. I learned so much. So much. So it is amazing how we are gifted so many people in our lives, and how if we're awake and aware, we can take all these little pieces from each one of them. And one thing that Bronwyn talked about with you, and I just, from what you just said, I want to dig into that a little bit more, which is you are a true servant leader. And did that happen along the way? How did that happen? Did someone, and I know you just said, like, you've learned all these little things. Was there a pivotal moment where you're like, I want to be a servant leader, not just a leader, because there is a difference?
Couple different moments. One of the moments I do remember is when I was networking in Dallas HR. It's funny how people see the tip of the iceberg and they're like, oh, you know everybody. Let me tell you, when I first went to my first Dallas HR meeting, I knew nobody.
Right.
And I remember trying to meet people, and it was very difficult. And I remember thinking, mindset, let's go, man, I'm a mover. What do I have to offer HR folks? Like, that was my thought. Like, it's, when I look back, I'm like, how could I even have that thought? But that was my thought. It was like, what am I going to do here? And I went to a meeting, and then I went to another meeting, and it was very, like, it was a challenge. Like, back then there were 250 people networking. It looked like everybody knew everybody.
Right.
And then one day I was like, you know what? I need to have a different approach. I need to learn about them. I serve the HR professional when they need to relocate talent. I need to learn more about their world.
Right.
And so I started becoming curious, and all of a sudden I took it off me.
Yes.
And started putting on, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh wow, well, you need that. And then I try to figure out how to get them a resource for that. And I try to, man, and then it started building. So that's a great question, because I think that it's a skill.
Yes.
That can be learned.
Yes.
If you want to learn that skill.
Yeah, Bruce, my first mentor, well, besides Bronwyn, probably right after, was a man named Walter Haley. And Walter Haley had a saying, and he said, be interested, not interesting. And that was in one of my books, and I to this day, I literally, as you just were talking about being curious, that is exactly what it is. Just be interested in people. And the more interested you are in them, the more interesting you are. Because we all want to feel important. We all want to feel valued. And I think that that's something that you are extraordinary at.
Thank you.
With every interview, every single person who you interview, everyone feels so important. And I'm curious, like, if when you need to be filled up, Who do you go to? Like if you need a little pick me up, or you need a little bit of someone, giving you a little like, oh,
Yeah.
who is that?
Besides my wife.
Besides your wife, it might be your wife.
Well,
Is it
she's
kids?
a big
Is
part of
it-
that. Let me
yeah.
tell you, people that are performing at a high level, they have goodness around them.
Yes.
And I've been fortunate. I have goodness all around me. But my brother actually said something recently, who has been a great mentor for me.
Yeah.
My brother Mark, who also lives in Dallas. He said something one time. He said, I just finished a speaking event. So a lot of times when I finish a speaking event, I might call him and say, hey, I just talked to, 30 of the most amazing people, and we just did this exercise, and they're just like, and I'm just energized. And he said, the thing about you, Bruce, is you get energized when you energize people.
Right.
Like it
Right.
almost comes
Right.
back to you.
Right.
And like right now, this right here, Kim, I'm very energized by this conversation. And so, yeah, I think that's how I get charged up. I will tell you, I did have somebody else call me not call me, but sent me a note one time, said, hey, do you ever rest? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my time as well. And I feel like really good leaders, they kind of know their limitations. They know what to say no to.
Yeah.
They know when to rest.
Right.
They know when to plan family time.
Right.
And I feel like I've gotten pretty good at that. And so I enjoy my downtime charging that human battery.
Yes.
But I do get energized by just sharing
Yes.
and encouraging and then learning from others. It just fills me up.
It's so obvious. It's so obvious.
Yeah.
So we could really go on and on.
my
I
gosh.
really have like a million other questions, but
It's been
I'm
fun.
gonna do something
Okay.
a little bit different. We didn't plan this, but Bruce, I want you to close your eyes for a minute. Just close your eyes for just a
Okay.
moment.
All right.
Okay, here we are. Gosh, I don't know. It's your 400th episode. And we're having this conversation. We're like, remember when we had the 200th episode? I'm curious, what does that 400th look like? What are you aiming for? What excites you about that? So I just want you to open your eyes and just share, like, what was going on in your mind as you think about that, the future.
I love that, by the way. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
I mean, I felt like I just all of a sudden like settled for a second. That was powerful.
Yes,
I love that. I will tell you immediately, the first question that came to mind was when my wife asked me, how long are you going to do this? And I answered, whenever I run out of people to talk to.
That's
like,
good.
I don't know. Jesse Itzler, who he's a triathlon and
NetJets. He owned NetJets.
Yes,
Sold NetJets.
yes.
Yes. And he's
he
amazing.
said something one time, and he's talking about like this growth mindset, and he's talking about a lot of times, like whenever we accomplish a goal, a lot of times we'll say, I did it. You got that certification. I did it. But he said, really, when you reframe it and you ask a question, instead of saying, I did it, saying, how far can I go?
Yeah.
Like having that mindset, then all of a sudden you're like, it like almost energizes you going, oh, that's great. Let's celebrate.
Right.
But let's keep going.
Yeah.
And that's where I am. Yes, there's work along the way, worthwhile work.
Right.
But the ROI, that return on investment, the people investment, like when you invest in people, I don't know of a better return.
Right.
In your career, in your life, I've become better because of everybody on my podcast. Like everyone, I've learned something from them, and so I feel like I hope that I get to 400, and when we do, we'll have another one of these, and we'll be talking about, hey, what else did you learn? How else did you grow? There's so much to learn today.
So much.
Like think about all of the work that you're doing.
Always
And
learning.
we were having a conversation just recently in Starbucks about AI, and I'm like, I need to learn that. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much. Like, think about what's they have. Like 200 episodes ago, I mean, I didn't know what Zoom was.
I know, and meanwhile, he came over today with the whole setup that I'm like, I need the setup. I need the setup.
Yeah, it was fun.
Bruce, if you were to be complimented for anything in your life, what would be a meaningful compliment for you or to you?
That's a great question. I think for me it would be, maybe somebody saying thanks for encouraging me to take a certification or to go to a meeting or to try something. Like, because of something you said or even something you did. We talked about modeling leadership. I went for it. And because you encouraged that, now look at me. Now look at the joy I have in every area of my life, and now I'm going to give that to somebody else. And that'd probably be the biggest compliment. I heard John Maxwell say one time that legacy is about not leaving something for someone, but it's about leaving something in someone.
Right.
And that's probably what I'm hoping for.
I love that. Well, This has been an absolute joy. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to interview you, which has been really, really fun, and to learn from you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. Hey, let me ask. So all the guests. So Kim Zoller, just real quick. I know you have shared like one thing that you have that you're looking forward to ahead. I mean, there's always something energized. We talked about my speaking. I'm very energizing right now.
Yes.
Energized about speaking and continuing to share. But what about you? As a way of saying thank you for interviewing me. What do you have coming up?
What I'm excited about is that I feel that leaders, in order to really be strong leaders, they need to learn the skills. And that is truly my focus. It's my focus in everything that I'm doing. We're doing a lot of management skill journeys where we're taking top leaders to mid-level managers. And I think it's everything that you've been speaking about, Bruce. It's everything that Bruce does on his podcast. And so that excites me. For the same reason as you said, what's the compliment? To me, the compliment is, what can I leave for someone else, right? What can I do that someone else can be better in their life and in their whole life, like in their life at home and in their life at work, because we take ourselves wherever we are, right? Wherever we go, we take ourselves. And I think that just energizes me so much. And I'll tell you another thing, just mentioning Jesse Itzler. Jesse says, and he has this analogy that I just absolutely love, that we're on a bus. So we're in our lane, and we're on a bus, and we're traveling on that bus, and we cannot go back. And we're traveling on this bus, and it only moves forward. It doesn't even stay still. And when you think about the end of your life, or you think about people in your life, as you're going on that bus, you only have a certain amount of time with each person. And so if you think about your parents, how much time, if they're still alive, how much time in the next X number of years are you going to pass them as you go on your bus? Because if you didn't see them in the last month or 2 months, it's done. And I think about that with my family. And I think about that with the people I really care about in my life and people who really give me energy. And I really believe that to teach people inside out leadership, where they really, just like I had you vision, that when people can take like what you're doing, you're on the bus. And I love that about you, and I love what we get to do in this world. And I feel like I feel very grateful. So, because we're on a bus.
I love that.
And the bus is moving. And so what do you want to do knowing you have, whatever time we have on this earth, what do we want to do while we're on that bus? And I think that's a really good question. And I think it leads us back to life in this leadership lane, which is really important, no matter what our role is and no matter what our title is. So, Bruce, You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. Gratitude. I'm grateful. Talk about gratitude. I'm grateful for you opening up your studio and letting us do this. I can't wait to share this episode. I'll put some information in the show notes about some of the stuff you're doing, and I can't wait to see what's ahead. So thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thanks.